Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Chamber's first policy forum of 2012. I'm Matt Klein, and the chairman of the DC Chamber of Commerce and president of Akridge. As the voice of business in the District of Columbia, one of the most important roles for the Chamber is to provide focus and attention on issues that matter to the future of the district. Our policy forums are one of the most important tools we have in advancing this objective. In these policy forums, we focus on subjects that are in the minds of all businesses, small, medium, and large. And these are issues that are not just one-day conversations, but the content of these forums generate actions and policies that affect the way that we do business not only today, but in the years to come. Because of the important impact we have achieved, we have made these policy forums a regular part of the program to be held multiple times throughout the coming year. We're very grateful for your attendance today, as we have a heck of a lot of brain power in the room, and it joins us from a variety of industry segments that contribute to the economic growth of the district. This diversity represents and makes what makes Washington an absolutely world-class city. It's no mystery that we face more competition today than we ever have, both globally and domestically. Our most important resource for engaging in this competition is our people. The city attracts the best and the brightest from around the world. And today we are here to talk about our most precious natural resource, our colleges and universities. Aptly titled, How Washington, D.C. Universities Mold the District Workforce and Shape Our Economy, in this policy forum, we're going to take a deeper look at the influence higher education plays in the district's economy. We have some of the most prestigious institutions in the world right here within the district's borders. But how do we maximize the resources of these schools to shape our economic landscape? That is one of the many questions that we will answer here today. Before I introduce our chamber leader, I would like to recognize and thank our policy forum sponsors. This is our business part of the agenda today. ACE Cash Express, Care First, Comcast, Cordia Partners, DC Water, Events DC, FedEx, Howard University, MC Dean, Miller & Long, Pepco, Pfizer, PNC Bank, Saul Ewing, Securitas, George Washington University, University of the District of Columbia, Verizon, Wachovia, the Washington Business Journal, Washington Gas, and the Washington Parking Association. You can see just by the list of sponsors, it's a who's who in Washington. And our silver and bronze level sponsors are listed here in your program today. I'd also like to thank our legislative reception sponsor, CSX, whom we will hear from later when Steve Flippin, CSX Director of Federal Affairs, delivers the closing remarks. So we value the partnerships we've forged with all of these organizations. So before I turn this over to Barbara, I just want to thank you all once again for joining us this evening. And so without further ado, I'll turn it over to the CEO and President of the DC Chamber, Barbara Lang.
Matt, thank you very much, and thank all of you for being here today. Each of you inspires us to advocate on behalf of DC's business community and to make the District of Columbia the ideal place to live, work, and of course do business each day. We feel energized and empowered to work on your behalf, and the turnout to events like this keeps us motivated day in and day out, and sometimes that's hard. I'd like to also take a moment to thank all of our sponsors. The vision and strategy we take with us when we walk out of the room today is only possible because of your commitment, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. I say all the time, DC is open for business. Isn't that right, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
And one sector that has played an integral role in our economic growth for generations is education. Even when we go through challenging economic times, the colleges and universities here in the district are constants. Storefronts may come and go, businesses may relocate, people will move in and out, but our colleges and universities are mainstays that not only we can always depend on, but that we should be quite proud. While bucolic and aesthetically pleasing to the eye, our local colleges and universities are more than just brick buildings and tree-lined walkways. They are economic drivers in our community. Consider this. According to a report commissioned by the Consortium of Universities, in 2010, universities as a whole spent $1.42 billion in the District of Columbia, and they are our city's largest private employers. Consortium University employees living in the region earn $3 billion annually and account for 200,000 jobs. And according to the study, these institutions add $11.3 billion overall to the regional economy. These numbers just don't lie. They are further proof that the education sector generates revenue, helps strengthen and stabilize our city's tax base, and drives our local economy. On behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to thank the consortium and the author of the report, Stephen Fuller of George Mason University, for providing these telling figures. The study was released where else? At the DC Chamber of Commerce last June. That brings me to today. Our panel is a who's who of powerful educators who have a vision for today and the future. They include Dr. Jerry Ice, president of the Graduate School USA, Dr. Stephen Knapp, and I'm not going in order because I've messed up my notes, Dr. Stephen Knapp, president of the George Washington University, Dr. Sidney Ribeau, president of Howard University, Patricia A. McGuire, Esquire, president of Trinity University, and I must say, of which I am a member of her board of trustees. And Dr. Allen Sessoms, the president of the University of the District of Columbia. Unfortunately, there are two other luminaries that wanted to be a part of today's event, but the timing conflicted with their schedules. Dr. Neil Kerwin, president of American University, is out of town and could not be with us today. However, he has sent some remarks that he wants to make sure that I highlight to all of you. And he wants them on his behalf, but on behalf of the university as well. And I see AU's team sitting right down here. First, he says, American University alone employs nearly 8,000 full and part-time workers, 37% of which are DC residents, and they generate over $115 million in payroll revenue from those DC residents. Their non-payroll outlays total over $86 million in 2010, almost 60% of which went to DC-based vendors. As head of the chamber, I love that. And Americans' commitment to community service resulted in 4,200 students contributing 142,000 hours to programs such as DC Reads and the Martin Luther King Day of Service. Now, I'd also like to say a few words about Dr. John DeGioia, president of Georgetown University, and his institution throughout his leadership at Georgetown, who happens to be the largest private employer in the city. President DeGioia has championed economic development and quality of life issues in the district, from supporting Mayor Gray's One City, One Higher program, to most recently bringing the higher education section together with the mayor to make DC the greenest college town in America. As chair of the Consortium of Universities, President DeGioia last week brought all 9 university presidents together to support citywide sustainability efforts, a partnership being hailed as the first of its kind in the nation between a city government and the higher education sector. Dr. DeGioia also wanted to be here today, but he had to be in New York to support the Hoyers, who are playing in playing Pittsburgh right now at the annual Big East basketball tournament. And so we wish them well. I haven't heard a score yet, so if anybody knows, you can holler that out. Thank you. We thank both Neil Kerwin and Jack DeGioia for their support. Now, we do have someone with us today who has become not only a fixture at our policy forums, but a valuable confidant who constantly has his pulse on every aspect of the District of Columbia. And of course, I might add, and this business community. He needs absolutely no introduction to this audience because you all know him quite well and is a good friend to the D.C. Chamber of Commerce. The Honorable Vincent C. Gray, the mayor of the great city of the District of Columbia and today's moderator. I cannot think of a more appropriate person to lead this discussion. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Podium's yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Barbara, for such a nice introduction. It is always a pleasure to work with the Chamber. I think we've done this 3 or 4 times, and I really look forward to it. It's a great way to interact around the truly challenging issues that we face as a city. We've had health care, we've had business, we've had a variety of topics that we've discussed as a part of these forums. So I look forward, as long as I'm welcome here and invited, I look forward to being able to continue to be a part of these discussions. I want to thank the Chamber too. I want to thank Barbara for her sterling leadership of the Chamber. And really, I think if you go back to just a few years ago, and this is not to diminish the contributions of her predecessors, but I think if you look at where the Chamber is today versus when she came, it really is light years ahead of where it was then, and really is absolutely one of the truly prominent agencies in the District of Columbia, entities bringing business together. I rarely am in a conversation where if it's about business in the District of Columbia, somebody doesn't say, what does the Chamber think? And whether we like it or not, they're really saying, what does Barbara Lang think? So how about a big hand for Barbara and her leadership?
You're here.
I also want to thank Matt Klein. He is the current leader in a succession of excellent leaders. Gina Adams was the president of the Chamber, or the chair of the Chamber last year, did an outstanding job. And Matt was actually on our last panel, the last forum. He was one of the people who was among the 5 or 6 folks really active contributors to that discussion. As a matter of fact, just to show you, I think, how relevant these discussions are, we talked about at the last one the impact of the regulatory process, the impact of regulation on business in the District of Columbia. And for those of you who were at the State of the District address, or had some introduction to what we talked about in the aftermath, I indicated that I'm going to appoint a business regulation reform task force. And that emanated from the discussion that we had there, the goal being to try to figure out how we make less complex and burdensome the regulatory process here in the District of Columbia. So again, it underscores the importance of what we're about in these forums. Fora. Isn't that right? Forum is a singular, and fora is the, is that right? Doctor?
Yeah, that's right. Or forums. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm in the right company to verify that, right? And he gave not only the university answer, but the politically correct one. That was it could be either one. Forum. In any event, I don't think I have to speak at length about my support for advocacy for education here in the city. I have talked about a cradle-to-career continuum of education, beginning on the very front end. I've been very proud to be a flag-waving leader, if you will, flag-waving supporter for early childhood education, especially pre-kindergarten services for 3- and 4-year-olds. I did the legislation when I was on the council. Barbara worked with us to be able to get that legislation enacted. I was proud that all of my colleagues at the end of the day supported it, and we really accelerated the implementation of it. I've, again, been proud to be in the seat of mayor to help move this forward. We frankly are several years ahead. We're about 2 years, 3 years ahead of where we expected to be, and we now are the first city in America to be able to say that we have universal pre-kindergarten, a seat for every 3- and 4-year-old in the District of Columbia. I was at Morey School on Friday for a book reading with the young people. It was a 2nd grade class, and it was a moment of great pride, certainly for me. There were about 30 kids in the 2nd grade class. They all were about 7 years old, and they were incredibly bright and incredibly well informed. And one of the things that I found out about halfway through the reading and the discussion was that every child in that class had been in school since she or he was 3 years of age. And it was clear that they were comfortable, they were 3 or 4 years ahead, 2 or 3 years ahead of where they would have been otherwise, and frankly, in a dramatic, concrete way, underscored the importance of early childhood education. What you're going to see in the budget coming up is we now are going to begin the process to accelerate getting kids into infant and toddler programs. And just probably a month or two, we will be opening EduCare, which is a center that we broke ground on last year in Parkside. It will serve 171 children who are pre-kindergarten as well as infants and toddlers. But more importantly than that, if there is anything more important than that, it also will be a place where we can do innovative things around how we teach kids at those very early stages, and also proliferate those best practices across the city. I think you all know what we're trying to do with education reform at the K through 12 level. We are working to continue to improve our traditional DC public schools. We have one of the most robust charter systems in the nation. We now have 31,000 kids in charter schools. They represent 41% of the children who are in public education in the District of Columbia, and both sectors, I think, will make the other better along the way. We also are working to reform our special education efforts. We have had, over the years, what I think were investments, and we can call them that, were well beyond the return on investment, a return on the dollar. And that is, we were spending $160 million on putting children into private schools for whom we had to pay, and then another $90 million transporting children with disabilities, $250 million a year. I set a goal last year of reducing by 50% by 2014 the number of children in non-public placements. Our baseline was a little over 2,200. Today, a year later, we are a little over 1,700. We have brought down by just about 500 the number of kids we have in those placements, but we're also increasing the capacity of our public education system to be able to serve those young people. And of course, as we talk about the training of young people, the best training ground for young people is in our secondary schools and our post-secondary opportunities, and that's what our panel represents today. You heard Barbara talk about some of the data that Stephen Fuller found, in his study about the impact of universities here in the District of Columbia. But there are others, almost 16,000 jobs for district residents, not in the university system overall, but just district residents, about 16,000 work in our university system here in the city. $609 million in payroll to folks who live in the District of Columbia who work in our universities. For every dollar spent by a university, the city gets a return of $1.40 in terms of the impact on our economy. And there are so many others that the money spent, in addition to those 16,000 jobs, the dollars spent impact, support another 5,000 jobs of varying kinds here in the District of Columbia. So the impact of the university is demonstrable. It is felt, it is seen. And what we want to talk about today is our ways in which we can continue to build upon that and appreciate the importance of our universities. Frankly, and we'll talk a little bit about this, there are those who have come to me and from time to time said, we ought to tax universities. They have such a commanding, demanding presence in the District of Columbia. They occupy so much property. In fact, I talked about this one night over in Georgetown, and somebody who purported to be a reporter reported thereafter that I supported taxing universities. That could not be further from the truth. That happens not to be the position that I have, but there are people who do have that position. My position is that we ought to work in a cooperative, collaborative spirit and try to figure out how universities can help us meet some of the needs of the city and the people who live in the District of Columbia. Frankly, last week's event, which Barbara mentioned, was a seminal event because it brought together 9 universities who collectively signed on to a pledge to promote sustainability here in the District of Columbia. And to hear some of the universities and what they already were doing, and now we're bringing it together under one umbrella, that is an example of what we can do working together. So today, my goal for this, and I hope it's the Chamber's goal, is to really understand the place of the universities in the District of Columbia and what impact they are having, and even more importantly, can have on building the economy in the District of Columbia. Last night I was at an event called Entrepalooza, and that's a tongue twister if there ever was one. There were 500 people at this event, and they all are involved in the technology arena in one way or the other. And we've really put a lot of effort down on the tech industry. But where's the place that if we start to attract more and more technology firms to the District of Columbia, if it's going to have maximum benefit, aren't we going to have people who are prepared for the jobs in the technology industry? And where is the place that we ought to be looking to prepare the people for those jobs in the technology industry, some of which they already are doing, and those folks are going elsewhere to find jobs. We want to be able to expand and improve upon that. So with that having been said, I guess we're going to have, are we ready to start? Are we going to have an introduction? Where do we go? Go right ahead. You know what? I want to go back to where back to one of the comments I made. I want to hear from you all. You've heard, just like I have, that there are people who believe that the universities don't pay enough to the District of Columbia, that they ought to pay property taxes, for want of a better way of putting it. I'd like to hear from our members of our panel how you feel about that. Has the case been made properly? Do people not perceive the importance of the universities in the city? And what ways are you already contributing to the economy of the city? And then as a corollary, and we'll come back to that, I'd like to explore with you ways in which you can make a further contribution to our city. So Pat, since you happen to be looking at me at the moment.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here today and bringing us together. And thank you, Barbara Lang, for your leadership on this and your wonderful trusteeship at Trinity as well. The mayor has asked how we feel about taxation, and let me respond to it this way. At Trinity, we have just published this report, by the way, which you may have seen, Mr. Mayor, on Trinity's partnership with the District of Columbia. And our story is one of revitalization of our institution through partnership with the city. Over the course of the last 20 years, Trinity has grown to become the largest private provider of higher education opportunity to District of Columbia residents. This year, 45% of our students are DC residents, and that's more than 1,000 students at Trinity. That's a little known fact about Trinity among people who might remember Trinity of the old days when we were, and we still have, by the way, the historic Catholic Women's College as our center, but our Women's College today has 1,000 students, half of whom are from the District of Columbia, and the total university is 2,500 students, and 1/3 of our DC residents come from the neighborhoods east of the river, and all of that is documented in this report. Well, that's a long prologue to the answer to the mayor's question. Trinity, with just a $30 million budget and just a $10 million endowment, awards directly to DC residents nearly $5 million in direct grants and discounts on our tuition. That is an incredible investment in the citizens of the District of Columbia. And that $5 million that we invest, and by the way, there's no cash behind that really, it's unfunded discount in higher education, it's lost revenue, if you will, but it makes it possible for some of the lowest income residents of the city to reap the benefits of a great higher education. Our median family income among our DC residents is just $32,000 a year. You compare that to flagship state universities where the median family income is over $100,000 a year. So here's this old line Catholic women's college, now a small university, serving the poorest of the poor in our city, a third east of the river. We have a program east of the river. Our program over at the ARC, which is an associate degree program, we took advantage of the mayor's initiative in pre-K education to include the pre-K teachers in that, but we operate that program at a loss, actually. The rate to attend is very, very low. And over the 4 years that we've had our associate degree program at the ARC, we have devoted, in addition to the $5 million in financial aid, we've devoted an additional $2 million in the education of the residents east of the river. So just there you've got a $7 million nut. I would say to those who talk about taxation, they don't know the story, and they obviously do not know how much our universities are investing in the city, and certainly they don't know how much Trinity is investing in the city. I will also note that as we revitalized Trinity over the years to become attuned to the needs of the District of Columbia, all of our strategic planning and thinking and our growth of new academic programs has been completely aligned with workforce needs and workforce opportunities for the residents of the District of Columbia and the surrounding Washington region. So, for example, we learned about the nursing workforce shortage. I was on the board at the Washington Hospital Center. I learned a lot about the healthcare workforce needs. As a result of that, we decided to create a nursing program at Trinity to create a pipeline from the local residents of the District of Columbia into the healthcare providers, because many of our healthcare providers were going out of town and indeed out of the country to hire their workforce for nursing and other healthcare professions. And we said, let's grow our own. And Trinity can do that because, in fact, we have so many students from the District of Columbia. Nursing has been a huge success. We're now starting occupational therapy. We're starting a program that will lead to physical therapy and so forth. So trying to do the alignment of academic programs in tune with the workforce needs of the city to get more of our residents into long-term academic programs that will, in fact, lead to credentials where they'll be employable is the kind of return we give to our city. Well, there you have it, and I will stop with that. But I hope that's a good answer.
Yeah. Quite complete. President Knapp, is GW doing enough in the city to be able to make the case that we really earn our keep as GW to not have to be taxed to support the city?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I do appreciate the Chamber's giving us an opportunity to address questions like this, and appreciate the leadership that you're showing, Mr. Mayor, in raising these kinds of issues in such a forthright way so that we do have an opportunity to talk about the things that we do as a consortium of universities. And I will say that I think the universities are incredibly important to the flourishing and the future of the District of Columbia, will become more so in part because of the kinds of partnership discussions that we're having with your office about ways in which we can be more strategic in looking at the needs in the city that we have the ability to address because of the unique strengths of our institutions. And you're looking here at an incredible diversity of institutions. We're all different sizes and structures and missions, and we really cover a pretty wide gamut of needs that I think we can begin to address. I'll give you some examples. We do a lot of partnering with the district in a variety of ways. We're in all 8 wards with our partnerships. We have partnerships with the public schools. We have a public school right on our campus, a school without walls. But we also have a strong partnership with Duke Ellington School for the Arts, which is another public institution, and with Ballou Senior High School, where we're rapidly developing partnerships. And I think we put a lot of time and effort into those. One of my great concerns about the threat of taxation of nonprofit organizations, which pretty much operate, as you know, almost at a break-even proposition, is that will hamper the ability that we have to make investments in those kinds of partnerships, where I think we have many more opportunities. We are right now in the early stages of developing a public-private consortium that will evaluate the District of Columbia schools in ways that I think will be really essential to measuring the progress that we're making, the efforts that your administration has underway to continue to advance our schools. And we have to invest in those. We invest staff time, we invest faculty and student efforts in those consortia. I think this is developing pretty rapidly. We're going to be the base of a consortium that will involve quite a wide range of research institutions. And that's again, something we can contribute. Our Institute of Public Policy has directly done work for the district in looking at financial issues. For example, the question of how our economic situation would improve if we could achieve statehood over time. That's one of the studies that we've undertaken. In the case of our School of Public Health, we've actually saved millions of dollars, found millions of dollars that the district otherwise would not have been able to identify through the work of our health policy program in the School of Public Health. I think this is something that took place while you were chairman of the right. DC Council. In the case of, right now, in the case of our George Washington School of Business, we have MBA students working in the Office of the Deputy Mayor of Planning Economic Development so that we can help develop plans for the kinds of technological development and attracting new industries and new businesses that will help diversify the district's economy, which I think is going to be really essential if we look at a potential ratcheting down of federal spending in the coming years. All these things that we're doing, and that doesn't even count, 150,000 hours of service that our students contribute across the district, which has been valued at about $5 million a year, just that activity alone. All of that is something that we can support because we're able to take the marginal dollars that we have as a nonprofit institution and invest them into programs. And if we're paying taxes, we're not investing in programs, and it's the programs that are the real contribution to the district.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Sessoms, I don't think you have to worry about being taxed. On the other hand, I think the challenge that you do have, and we've heard it historically, and I'm sure you've heard it innumerable times since you've been, in your role, and that is, what is the added value of the University of the District of Columbia? I've even heard, why don't we just, pay the tuition for the students there to go to another university locally? We'd probably save money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure you've heard all of those arguments and more. But what is the added value? Is there one of the University of the District of Columbia, now its component part, the community college?
Well, thank you for that question, Mr. Mayor. And I do want to thank everyone for coming and listening to us spiel on these things. Spiel is a technical term. What is true is that the University of the District of Columbia is the state university of this town. One of our pillars, one of the core missions of the institution is to serve the District of Columbia and its residents. 65% of the students enrolled in degree granting courses at the university, including the community college, are DC residents. If you count the workforce development piece, it's 85%. We are focused on the District of Columbia. With the community college, what we did when we spun out, thanks to your support and intervention in a couple of very strategic ways, is we have created a pipeline from a dysfunctional workforce in some instances. For example, we have a population in the District of Columbia which may be the highest educated population in the nation, 50%-ish have bachelor's degrees or higher, but 35% are functionally illiterate, which means third grade reading level or less. These people simply cannot participate in the economic vitality of the District of Columbia. So what we've created is a pipeline. We've taken the opportunity to create a community college which has a significant workforce development and remedial education component. And these folks can be trained to get jobs. But jobs are not enough because jobs disappear all the time. Every 5 years, 85% of the jobs change. So the idea then is to get them to work and give them the opportunity to educate themselves at the baccalaureate degree or higher level so they can go into careers. The idea is to build a pipeline from non-participation in the economy to careers. And that's a multi-stage process, and we focus on the District of Columbia almost entirely in that regard. We are an institution that's been around for 160 years. As you know, celebrating 160 years today. We've been contributing to the district economy that long, and it is my pleasure to provide you, Mr. Mayor, with a hot-off-the-press book on the 160 years of scholarship and achievement in the nation's capital, including pictures.
And your book report is tomorrow. Bravo.
I'll rush right home and read this every.
Well, it's one of the things it might do is revolutionize you because it starts from before the Civil War, and you follow the university through the vicissitudes of everything from the desegregation movement to women's rights, the civil, it's extraordinary. And the university followed that, but it also participated in the transformation of the District of Columbia in major ways. On the partnership piece, here's another small document that talks about the number of partnerships.
Your people got me on the way in, Dr.
Oh, good. I'm just
so I have a copy of this one already. As you might imagine, I haven't read it yet.
But we have others for those of you who are interested. But just let me say that the University of District of Columbia is, I think, seminal to the economic future of the university, of the District of Columbia and its university sector, because we are obligated as a land-grant university to drive economic development, to drive social change, to participate in those activities that really do transform the social and economic environment of the city in which we're embedded. This is our home. We can't move. And we want to be a part of the fabric of the lives of all the district residents.
Okay. Dr. Ice, your operation, the graduate school, which I think used to, many years ago, was the USDA graduate school, right?
Correct.
It may be, of those who are up here, may be the one about which people know the least. And so I have an idea what you're doing, but from your perspective, what do you think about the graduate school being taxed? What's the argument against that for you?
Well, let me first indicate that the graduate school did grow out of the USDA graduate school. And we, in 2011, celebrated our 90th anniversary, 90 years in Washington, D.C., and for many years we were the Evening College of Washington without degrees. And as a result, there were literally thousands of students that came through our evening programs, and today we handle about 13 or 14 different languages at night. But in the last, specifically 17 years, we took on the work of being a trainer in the federal government. And today, if you look at where we're located at 7th and Maryland, we actually do pay a tax as a nonprofit since we lease. And there is no difference between paying a lease square footage, whether you're commercial or nonprofit. And most of our locations across the country, we actually lease those facilities to provide the education. But for an economy in Washington, D.C., overall, the graduate school will serve about 200,000 per year. And in Washington, D.C. specifically, we serve about 40,000 over the course of the year. And we have classrooms that bring in roughly about 1,000 students a week in 2-day courses, 3-day courses, 5-day courses in about 400 subject areas. 30% of those students, participants, are from out of town. So that 2-day, 3-day, 5-day, they are contributing heavy to the economy here in Washington, D.C., living in a hotel, food, etc. And that is turning over every week. So it's not the same 40,000, but it is a constant turnover that is happening. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, I think what the graduate school is different than my colleagues here that represent very fine universities. The graduate school is a very public service, government-centered operation. We are a practitioner-centered operation, meaning 2-3-day courses aimed at city, state, and federal government. Specifically, how it can help this city is that there are roughly 2 million federal workers, excluding the Postal Service. And it is expected that about 50% of those will retire in the next 10 years. In this particular area, there are roughly 300,000 federal workers. And if you can imagine that same leaving the federal workforce will provide opportunities for this city to use its residents to apply for those kind of jobs that they're leaving. And the graduate school is the place to go to get that ticket punched, to learn more about federal appropriations. If you're into HR, classification, staffing, these are very practical very focused type of courses. And so for the resident here in DC, they have the opportunity, as these 300,000 jobs begin to open up over the next 10 years, the city resident stays in the city, pays future tax to this city, and we're not having 300,000 area federal workers. So this is, I think, important what the graduate school was sort of a hybrid. We considered ourselves a comprehensive educational institution. My good friend at University District at Columbia, congratulations on having the team in both the men and women in the tournament. But I will say at the graduate
quite
school,
an accomplishment. They're in the NC2A tournament, right?
Yeah, both
Division
men
two,
and women.
right?
Yeah, Division
Yeah.
two, yeah.
That's
But
what-
our
25 years.
Allen, our teams continue to be undefeated, untied, and
and
so-
winless, right?
But in any event, I think not only what we bring in the city as a continuing professional education to the federal worker coming in from all over the country, but what we now can provide is huge opportunities for the TSAMA hitting the federal government on retirements. In addition to that, in the last few years as an independent, private, nonprofit institution, we are looking more to be a helper to this city for continuing professional education. There's a tremendous link between what we do for the federal government and what happens in finance, HR, acquisition, those critical areas in the city as they perform their duties. So as the city begins to see retirements, people leaving, we can provide that continuing professional education within the city itself. So we see as our add-on to associate degrees, our add-on to certificate programs, and more linking ourselves to helping the underemployed and unemployed in this city as really being a valuable asset for you, the mayor.
And in point of fact, you are the lead tenant in the Southwest Waterfront development.
We are looking very much at the opportunity to create a what I would call a educational training and a place in which a number of providers can come in to provide the kind of workforce development that the city needs. And I've used the term creating an educational mall, in which in that educational mall we would focus on some of the leading areas of job needs in this city: construction, hospitality, allied health fields, as well as government are some of those just-in-time, first-level kind of job that I need to get into, and we need to make it very attractive that I can take a few of these courses to at least be a much more attractive applicant for those open positions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dr. Ribeau, you've had lots of time to formulate that. You ought to be really ready to respond. You know, there are times when you hear arguments that that universities are in the city, but not of the city. Some are being perceived as of the city. When you talk about taxation, is Howard enough of the city to be able to make a credible argument that that shouldn't be imposed upon you?
I think it's a wonderful question, and one that I have had the opportunity to pursue an answer for in Ohio and in California, where I had previous leadership positions in higher education. And so coming here to Washington, D.C. and hearing that question now, it resonates with me. I first would like to thank the Chamber and the Mayor for your leadership in this, because in those other states where I've been, the solution to the challenges came about through alignment and collaboration. If you don't talk about things that are important, if you don't share the asset basis that you have, you've heard from my colleagues, wonderful opportunities, wonderful accomplishments, programs, achievements, a myriad of things that they are doing to add value to the city. But we don't share that information, then it's hard for people to understand why they should not impose another charge on the university. So thank you all for forging this alignment. Just for folks who are not familiar with Howard University, we don't have a team in the NCAA. Now, I say that jokingly, but I say it in a serious way. We did studies when I was in Ohio, when I was in California, about the added economic growth, the number of student enrollments that grew as a result of having a nationally competitive team in basketball or football. I mean, there's a certain halo effect that goes along with that. So it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. I wish we did have a team on a competitive level, but it's also just an economic economic impact that you can't.
Did they lose in the MEAC yet?
No, the guys are still playing. But, you know, because of our conference, you only get one team in the tournament, so you have to win the tournament.
But you still have a shot, right?
We're still alive, yeah. Now, the women have a better chance than the men. Like the records show that the women have a chance to compete, but we're not quite there yet. Just want to throw it in there, man.
That's a great political answer.
So just about Howard University, for those who might not know, very quickly, this weekend we're having our Charter Day celebration, celebrating our 150th anniversary right here in Washington, D.C., right on Georgia Avenue. The house that was General Howard's original house is still on the campus, and we still utilize it for activities and events. We've recently renovated it. So we've been working in the district for a long time. Just to scope, just contextually, we have about 7,000 full and part-time employees. About 30% of those employees actually live within the district. Our impact, based on the same study that's been referenced earlier, on the local economy is about $342 million. There are ways that you can monetize, what we do in direct linear fashion, but there's also a number of things that we do that are critically important, I think, to the quality of life for the district. And I want to mention just a couple of those things. When I was preparing for this, I talked to our faculty about initiatives that they have that are community-based initiatives. And I identified over 100 different programs. And they fall into categories of consumer service, recreation and athletic programs, health education, screening and clinical services, diverse activities that have to do with health and wellness, career counseling. So they cover a wide spectrum of activity, but there are a couple that I think are particularly important. One is HUH, or Howard University Hospital. Howard University Hospital has been around and serving the community for a number of years. In 2010, we served about 150,000 patients that were residents of the district, about 150,000 patients. On an annual basis, we probably provide uncompensated care for over 148,000 patients, but $40,583 we spend on uncompensated care for residents in the community. It's something that we do not because it's a good business proposition. Those of you here know that losing that kind of money is not a good business proposition, but it's the critically important value that Howard has historically provided for its community. And it's something we're very proud of. And we have regular discussions with the Health Sciences Committee and the Board of Trustees about whether or not in these challenging financial times we can continue to do this or not. Well, the fact is it's part of our motto, truth and service, and the service to the community and the health sciences is critically important. We have the only dental school in the district, and our dental school provides clinical work and dental services for the entire community at free or significantly reduced rates, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. So there's a lot of things that we do in the health sciences space, our nursing, clinical nursing programs working in the communities that are critically important for the community, and they're not things that provide margin on our P&L, but they're things that are important for us as a university to provide for the community. So that's one thing in a whole list of other things that are attached to health and wellness. In the research area, HIV and AIDS, healthcare disparities, diabetes, our faculty are doing cutting-edge research, and those sorts of issues, take HIV, AIDS, for example, and the numbers of cases identified in the district are critically important to the quality of life in the district. And we have very intentionally identified those areas in our new strategic plan for the health sciences because of their value to the community, their value to the district, and it's something that we're very important to us. Healthcare disparities in general. We know the disproportionate kind of impact that we have in healthcare on certain populations, certain economically challenged populations. And so we've aligned our research and our clinical work in the health sciences around healthcare disparities, and it's something that we do very, very seriously. One other thing I want to mention, two other things, and one is our middle school. We have a math and science middle school on campus. It was actually
It's a charter school, right?
one of the charter schools, the numbers that you provided. In 2005, it became the first and only charter school that's housed on a university campus, to our knowledge. It's a math and science school, and it's a school that actually serves 8 wards of the city. It's not a charter school that just takes the best and the brightest. It takes any students that are prepared and can benefit from the math and science curriculum that's provided there. We've had a National Teacher of the Year come out of that school. We've had our students go on to the probably the most challenging and the most competitive high schools when they leave that school. And it's something that the university invest in heavily of our own resources because of the quality it provides to the community. We've been able to find partners, Google, National Science Foundation, other private partners to support us. And so our students get the most recent technology. They get access to things that they don't normally get, in their home environments or in their communities. And it's a story of success. One of the reasons it's a story of success is because our faculty members from the natural sciences and from the social sciences, actually work with the faculty and work with the students, to help them, develop their educational capabilities. We've even had a student there that win a national spelling bee, which is not related to math and science, but they get a holistic kind of education. So that school is something that I think it adds value also. And there's a number of programs, that we have in our business college that actually work on economic development, entrepreneurship. We started one that's now funded by the small business operation of the city, but we started with the Ford Foundation grant to actually have our faculty, our graduate students work with the local communities to develop, kind of expertise, find out about startup businesses, find out how to explore their entrepreneurship, talents and inclinations. And so I think, to get back to your question, is that, and I think it's a very important one, and the answer is, that, it's what my colleague said, we are employers. We do the things traditionally that you'd want a good business to do in the community, but as important, we add tangible quality to the life of the community and add value in a number of different ways in preparing the youth, to help people become more effective business people, to provide care and services for people in our community that desperately need that. And I think all of our universities, not just Howard, all of our universities do that willingly and stand ready to do it in a much more competitive way as we move forward in working in this partnership.
All right, each of you has had an expansive opportunity to make your case. and you have seized it. I'm going to ask you to not be so expansive now as we move further into this. And you know what? You're welcome not to just spoke off of me. If you hear something that one of the others says, just jump in and it'll add to the dialogue. Each of you, and that's one of the jobs of the president of a university, to make a compelling case for your institution and your importance, and you've done a good job at that. However, I'm not sure everybody shares that view in the District of Columbia. One need only engage with these quote-unquote debates around campus plans, which can be quite ferocious. I can't imagine anybody in a university setting who would want to see them any less frequently than every 10 years. Somebody had one that was every 20 years recently, which...
Ours.
Yours is 20? Okay. I'm sure you're happy about that one.
I'm happy.
But what it leaves you with, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to address it, it leaves you with the fact that there apparently are a lot of people in the District of Columbia that don't have that level of appreciation for the University of community. Are you just misunderstood? Are people just unreasonable? What is it that accounts for the fact that there appears to be a significant gap between how you view yourselves and others view you in the District of Columbia? Why don't we start, I'm going to move it around a little bit. Let's start with you, President Knapp. You've Foggy Bottom, and you have had some interesting
well, right now, I think because of the success of a project that was really quite a spectacular one, it's the what we call the Avenue, which is on the site of the former site of our hospital, which moved 1 block west, and then Boston Properties developed that as a mixed-use campus really keeping it on the city's commercial roles with retail, housing, and office space. The largest grocery store that's ever been anywhere near that neighborhood, a 40,000 square foot Whole Foods. It's made that whole thoroughfare there quite a vibrant place, not just for us, but for the neighbors. And so when I met with the ANC, as I did this last weekend, they were actually pretty pleased about the progress that we've been making, and I think also about the working relationship that we've developed. And because we now have frequent meetings with the community. I actually live on campus, and my predecessor who's here, President Trachtenberg, didn't have the opportunity to do that because we didn't have a house available, but I live there, so I'm able to be part of that neighborhood now. And by doing that, I'm constantly in touch with what the neighbors are concerned about, and we've addressed a lot of those concerns. So we provide patrols. We actually provide ambulance service for the neighborhoods that surround us if the city ambulances aren't able to respond. And so I think we've improved that relationship. But I think to get at the heart of your question about understanding these institutions, I want to go back to something that President Ribeau said, because I think if you listen to him talk about how he thinks about the programs of his university, and I think it applies to all of us, what I was really struck by was how we deliberately and consciously think about the needs of the district when we're designing our programs. And a really good example of that is this health disparities issue. Just like his medical programs, our cancer programs are almost entirely focused on the major cancers that are the most significant in terms of their disparate impact on our community. So it's breast cancer, it's colon cancer, it's prostate cancer. We have a mammovan that goes around and provides free cancer screening for women really across all 8 wards of the district. And we design those programs because we are, to go back to your phrase, in and of the District of Columbia. We're now having our 100th anniversary in Foggy Bottom. We've been in 3 locations here, but we've been here since 1821, but in Foggy Bottom since 1912, the same year that the cherry blossoms arrived, as a matter of fact.
So it's the 100th year?
It's our 100th anniversary, and we're using that to highlight all the things that it means to be in and of the district. But one of the most important things is that when we're looking at our Graduate School of Education and Human Development, we're not looking beyond the district to find things that we can contribute. We're looking for ways which we can partner with the DC public schools to develop opportunities to bring to bear the expertise of our faculty and the passionate engagement of our students to address the needs of the city. And I think that may not be fully understood because I think there may be a perception of ivory towers that are much more concerned about issues elsewhere than they are right here at home. In fact, that's just not the reality of our universities.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Sessoms, President Sessoms, you just went through a campus plan experience. I'm sorry that that President DeGioia and Kerwin are not here. They have, I think they still are going through it, and I'm sure they could share lots of experiences that they've had. You just went through it. Again, to a lesser or greater extent, it seems like yours was not as contentious as other campus plans have been in the city. But even still, there were some people who didn't seem to appreciate the university as much as they might, or certainly in concert with the presentations that have been made here. Why do you think that is?
We love our neighbors. I declare it unequivocally. It is in part because our group, led by Thomas Redmond, Emil Keddy, Barbara Jumper, talked and talked and talked and visited and went to every single meeting and organized meetings and explained what we were doing. And we came out with a plan that was endorsed more or less by everybody. There are a few outliers, because this is Washington, there are always a few outliers, who have simply embraced.
You mean other communities don't have outliers?
Yes, well, yeah.
Don't disparage us, Dr. Sessoms.
I must admit, I've never seen anything quite like Washington, but there must be other places similar. But what is true is that the community was brought into the planning process at the very early stages. And what we emphasize in everything we're doing is a transformation of the university to the benefit of the District of Columbia. We got them to understand that this is their university. We can only do what the District of Columbia and its government wish us to do. And we took their input and really understood their concerns and modified our plan to meet some of those concerns. But we also embrace sustainability in a major way. So we are transforming a corner of Connecticut Avenue, which can best be described as Stalin-esque, into something that's actually pleasing. We're opening the campus up, so it is not just for the university, but we want it to be one of the centers of that community. And people are embracing that. People just think it's about time because it's really pretty ugly around there.
Okay, but what is it about universities where there's a penchant to respond with any creeping, creeping additional presence, in the community is not a good thing? Why isn't there a penchant to say, wow, the university is expanding, I can't wait?
I haven't quite figured that out because nobody's going to tell Lockheed you shouldn't build a plant in my neighborhood if you're going to employ a lot of people. And that's in some sense what's being said. I think it's because it's a changing demographic. Many of the neighborhoods are really established, and when you expand, you bring in kids. And a lot of folks, even if some of them are their own kids, just don't want those many kids around. It's an interesting exercise. We had arguments about with some of the neighbors about the expanding use of the metro station. We're fortunate to have a red line metro station in the basement of the university, and folks were saying, well, what happens when you get more people on the metro? And I'm saying, isn't that a good idea? It sort of makes sense to me. That's what the metro is for, but there was really discussions about that. I think the Planning Commission and Zoning Board here has been fabulous. I mean, it really did help us explain to the community where the community should be going and how we can help it get there. And I think it really is a dialogue that made an enormous difference. But it's easier to be a public university than a private university because we are beginning to explain and getting people to embrace the fact that we are a public good. We're not a private good. We are there for them. That's what this place is for. That's how it was founded. That's how it grew. And that's where we're going in the future. And that does seemingly really help a lot.
Has Trinity, President McGuire, has Trinity been through an experience where it maybe felt underappreciated, was underappreciated?
No, actually, I hate to be, the contrarian here, but with perhaps the gift of our wonderful location in the Brookland-Edgewood community, we have a great relationship with our community, and in fact, our neighbors testify on our behalf at our campus planning hearings, which may be unusual, and we have had a wonderful relationship. Now, I think there's several reasons for that, which may be an object lesson to think about. One is, I think many people who are longtime residents of the District of Columbia know that Trinity went through a period, first in its earlier history, we were the great gray lady up there on Michigan Avenue, quite remote from the neighborhood and community. Nobody knew what went on the other side of that big old fence that surrounds our property and that very imposing main hall building and the sisters who didn't let any men onto campus hardly at all. So, who knew what was going on there, except us alums. I know there's alums here, and we knew what was going on, and it was a great deal of fun. It was.
Would you
in fact,
would you like to explain that?
Afterwards. But what happened to Trinity is an object lesson, because it also is true that when we fell on hard times, when our traditional enrollment of women discovered Georgetown and Catholic University, once those great men's universities went co-ed and our enrollment declined, that we almost did close back in the 80s. And one of the great crises that our neighborhood almost faced was the thought that there would be this big institutional campus that would have been vacant. It would have been another 28 acres uninhabited, or perhaps turned over to a different kind of development in Northeast Washington. Development is coming to our neighborhood now, but it wasn't there back in 1970 or 80 or 1990 even, when I was a student there and Trinity was on hard times. So we faced the crisis and the challenge of what happens if an institution disappears that is, in fact, should be a pillar of a neighborhood and a community. I think instinctively, although we didn't talk about it that way at the time, I think our community understood that. And I think our community, through that crisis of Trinity's existence, helped us to rethink how we could be of great value to the community in Brookland and Edgewood primarily, and how we could turn that around from being a remote and isolated academic institution disinterested in the city. I mean, I will tell a little story on us historically, that when I began as president in 1989, I asked the then director of admissions how many students we enrolled from the DC public schools, and she said, none, we don't recruit there. That was 1989. And that's the old Trinity, and that's a shameful story, but I'm very public about that because this tells you in the space of 20 years how rapid and our transformation has been. But it's been a transformation that we did in partnership with our neighborhood and city, because we realized that if we didn't do it in partnership with our community, we would be gone, and the community would be not well for the loss of that economic health that the university brings, that activity, that center of intellectual growth and attainment, and it could have become something else, sure, over time, but it mostly would have impoverished the community as much as Trinity was feeling impoverished. So we revitalized ourselves in partnership. When we built our one big facility in the time that I've been president, the Trinity Center for Women and Girls in Sports, we did it completely in partnership with and engagement with our community, and our community feels they own that recreation center as much as we feel that. In fact, we get the letters from the senior citizens, a wonderful lady writing a letter saying, the ladies in my church and I agree that we have lived 5 years longer because we get to use your pool every day.
Great.
Now, you can take that to the bank, right? That in fact, because we revitalized ourselves with our neighbors and we included our neighbors in our campus and they feel they own it, that they in fact have seen their lives improve as much as we've seen our life improved. And that is a very different story.
Mr. Mayor,
Each of you, go ahead.
I think that there's a thread in what Pat said that's very important. When I think about the history of Howard University, especially the history of political activism, the students at Howard have always seen the community as an extension of the university. Mm-hmm. Going back to the 60s and the 70s, you know, and that concept, there was a time when people had thought about gating universities. When I was in California, in USC, University of Southern California, I mean, they're gated off from the community, actually, walled off. But there was a conscious decision, I think, and this goes back to your inclusion concept with the Health and Wellness Center, you know, that our students right now see that the community is part of who they are and their identity. They do not want to be separated. Now, every school doesn't have the same evolution or the historical kind of background or development. But the fact is, I think to what Pat's point is that the more you can include folks, now you know your primary mission is to serve your students and that's your primary obligation, but if you can do it in some kind of symbiotic way that develops the community and helps the community in the same way, I think it's a win-win proposition, and that's a great story that you shared.
You know, each of you in your own way, and as part of your answers, has emphasized relationships, partnerships, engagement, you know, whatever term one wants to use to describe it. So let me put part of a statement out here, and I want you all to finish it. The partnership opportunity that I think that we're not involved in, and I think would benefit the city most is, finish my sentence.
I'll take that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think to have a partnership opportunity that I would envision would have a strategic alignment between the way the city is thinking about its economic development and the diversification of its economy and the contributions that the university could make to meet that strategy with its contributions, whether it's in educational programs or in our case, as we're very heavily involved in right now, investing in research and building our research in areas of science and technology. You know, our vision of our university at this moment is to build on the strength that we have traditionally had in areas of policy and law and business, and to add to those strengths in science and technology, which will undergird the credibility of our strength in policy, but at the same time will meet the needs that we see developing in this community for a diversification of its industrial base, frankly, to embrace the kinds of technology companies that we're now seeing not only being attracted to the District of Columbia, but actually being spawned here in the District of Columbia. So just to give you one example, last year we created a technology transfer office that in 1 year increased the number of disclosures of inventions fourfold in a single year. And we're hoping some of that's going to be intellectual property that will contribute to the economic vitality of the District of Columbia. But we can do that strategically if we understand in a partnership exactly where the investments are the city thinks needs to be made in its programs so that we can match those with the investments that we're making. And as you've perhaps heard me say in the past, Mr. Mayor, I think that if we had a strategic alignment all along the spectrum of education from pre-K all the way through higher education, graduate and professional programs, and we were consciously thinking of those programs in alignment with the economic opportunities that we see developing in the district, I think that would have a tremendous impact on the future opportunities for the city.
Dr. Rice, the partnership is?
Well, there's no question that the colleges, universities in this city have enormous intellectual and resources that could be made available to this community, and in other ways, more so than place-bound. We're talking about the richness campuses, of the life that goes on there. But we also have the ability to create virtual environments in which, from the iPhone to whatever outstanding music that takes place, the culture that happens throughout the city could be brought to bear to really create a village of a different type that is available 24 hours a day, and it is not place-bound by the campus, by its location, but by simply the technology that drives that to the resident of this city. And it can go all the way from leisure to that becomes highly focused on doing my job better and creating a better life for my family.
With specificity, what would be that partnership that the graduate school is not engaged in now that you believe would benefit the city?
Yeah, I think since you take our evening programs have largely been modeled in many ways after the 1960s, 70s open university concept, and in that kind of arrangement, we welcome all that would come into that open university kind of focus to bring the best of whatever in a non-credit to credit ways that would benefit the community.
President Sessoms?
Coupling more strongly with the business community through the DC Chamber, the Greater Washington Board of Trade, just a plug here, I'm on the book, and the government to make sure we define the future economic environment of the District of Columbia. We're not doing that. We have the intellectual brain power to do that. We have the educational power to do that.
UDC can do that? UDC can help us define. I mean, we have some thoughts on it, obviously, because we've laid out some things, but what would be UDC's contribution through an additional partnership that would bring that to bear?
The beauty of the land grant system is we were designed to do the applied research to affect the economic environment in which we're embedded. So if we understood where the economy, through the intellectual capacity of everybody in the consortium, and the business community needs to go, we start training for that future now. I had a lunch with some folks from the Greater Washington Board of Trade, discovered that Accenture is looking to fill 400 spots. They can't find the people from the District of Columbia.
Okay, but if you don't know that, then what are you training people for? And how do you make
Well, we know it, but you asked what we can do better. We could do more of that. We need to couple much more strongly with the business community. We need to couple much more strongly with the government. We need to couple strongly to the federal government. There's 350,000 jobs in the federal government, of which 200,000 will probably turn over in the next 10 years. We need to be training people for those jobs. We need to help the government decide what it needs to be when it grows up, because it's not going to be what it is now. And we need to help it get there by training the folks who can lead that train.
What we can contribute is the plan, the business plan that identifies those needs prospectively so that we can then align the kinds of resources that Dr. Sessoms is talking about and bring them to bear on those employment sectors that we know are going to be growing. And that's what we can, and we are doing that, as you know, Mayor. We're actually contributing right now. We're getting our students, we're getting our faculty involved in developing that plan. And I think that ideas that also, I think Howard's going to be involved in that project. I think Georgetown's also going to be involved in that project. We intend to contribute MBA students, business faculty, economics faculty, policy faculty, to developing that overall plan in support of the district, which will then enable us to identify those sectors we should be investing in for training and education. And I think aligning all those resources will be tremendously powerful for the future. And I think it's very much in the spirit of what the Chamber and the Board of Trade would like to see happen.
And when I talk about crafting relationships that would not look at taxation as a way of having the universities contribute more, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We've worked with GW to do just what you described. What I'm looking for are some concrete ways that all the universities would make a contribution to that effort. Well, what is the partnership, Dr. Ribeau, that Howard would step up and say, this is the partnership we're not engaged in now, but it is the one that we would like to pursue?
The concept I would use would be reciprocity, and what it would be working with pre-K through 12 schools, not working on the schools, but working with the teachers, developing curricula, bringing the most innovative teaching and learning strategies. All of our faculties at all of our universities are doing cutting-edge research about teaching and learning, creating the next generation of skills and techniques for learning. But to actually get in, and I've worked on these projects before, not as the superior, but get in with the teachers in the school districts and with the department heads and say, how can we, and that's the reciprocity concept, how can we collectively create a better teaching and learning environment so we get the performance objectives we want for our schools? So that would be one thing, working directly in a reciprocal kind of relationship with the schools, up close and personal. And I think all of us have seen, like in a microcosm, how this can work, but district-wide. The second thing that Howard is not doing that I'd like to see us do is we be captured by the idea of bridges. We have international relationships all around the world, and all of our universities do, but I've just been meeting with our faculty about the diaspora recently, and to bring those to bear on our university and economic investments, you know, in our universities and our communities. And I think that's a great opportunity because we have the relationships, and they're through the faculty, it's through their research initiatives, all throughout Europe and Africa and Asia and the Middle East. But bring those back to the table and going back to what President Knapp said and aligning those with what you all are trying to do in economic development and see how we can match these things up.
To what extent, you've alluded to it, and that is, you know, universities are often thought of as ivory tower environments, where whatever goes on there has some mystical value, and you know, it doesn't necessarily translate into real life. To what extent are you all involved in the application, applied research that's being sponsored, being promoted, being conducted by the university, being translated into improving the quality of life in the District of Columbia?
You know, I think that's a unique property of the institutions in this city. I think partly because we're here in Washington, partly because of the history of our institutions. I think we all tend to bridge the gap between theory and practice in a much more active way than is true of many other universities that maybe are often, you know, in a pastoral setting someplace, because we are part of the city. And so I think that's why we design our programs in the way that we've been describing, to meet the needs of the community around us, but also even in areas where we're addressing things like international relations. You know, we're not just doing the theory of that, we're engaged in advocacy, part because we have, frankly, the experts who are in our community become part of our faculty. I think all of our faculties are permeated with people who are coming out of the world of practice and moving in and out of the world of theory and practice. So we bridge that gap, and so do our students, because our students fan out across, they work in your offices, they work on Capitol Hill, they're engaged, they come here because they want to make a difference to the world. And that's a characteristic, I think, that's shared by all the students in the universities that are represented here in this consortium.
You know, I think another place where this is so important is in our relationship with our local schools. And Dr. Ribeau was alluding to that. You know, at Trinity, our School of Education faculty works very closely with schools. We have a reading specialist who is very much involved with the reading program. We have counseling faculty who work with the school counselors. So the partnership exists. I think we could do better, and I think we could have an even more robust relationship between the universities and our local schools, and that's something that I think we should keep exploring. I'm on the Deputy Mayor's Cradle to Career Pathways team with Dr. Guevara from the Community College, and that's exactly the kind of discussion we're having. How do we take what is and make it better and more robust, because we do have the talent to bring to bear on the educational challenges of our city, and how can we make that real and not just theoretical? That's one piece. I think a second piece where we might be able to do a lot better, at least I'll say at Trinity, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, we all have programs in business, and we work with the Chamber, we work with the Board of Trade, and yet I wonder sometimes about our own programs, could we exploit that resource to be of better service to building entrepreneurship capacity in the city? And how could we do that, especially in the marginalized neighborhoods? You know, we're working, our Dean, Taleka Brooks, is working with the team over at St. Elizabeth's to redevelop that, and we want to be part of the Southeast. We're already in Southeast at the Arc. We want to expand, but we need know-how, and we need to figure out how to build that kind of partnership with the business community and with your team. The third piece that I'm seeing, and we're talking international, but it's something that, because we serve so many DC students, has been on my mind for a long time. And you mentioned earlier about being in the city but not of the city. This is an incredibly international city. We get 20 or more million visitors a year coming from all over this country, but also from all over the world. We have all the embassies here and so forth. And yet one of the things we see that is highly problematic in our local students is a narrowing of focus, a lack of world experience that in fact really inhibits their long-term growth and capacity to return value to the city through their own worldview. And we try to think of how to do that at Trinity by exposing our students to many opportunities, but figuring out how we could partner with our international community in this city to give the residents of the city a broader worldview, and that includes more study abroad or other kinds of opportunities out of the city for our local students, would be incredibly valuable when those students come back and go to work in the city. And that's a different perspective from just doing internationalization.
Let me give you a specific thing that we're doing. We created the College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability, and Environmental Sciences specifically to focus on the problems of the District of Columbia. We're building a research agenda and applied research that will deal with air and water pollution, that will deal with urban agriculture, that will deal with the things that you need.
As you expand on your answer, though, how do we know that? I mean, I'm learning something now. I know that there's a farm. You know, there's 143 acres or whatever. But how do I know what it is that you are focusing on there? And how do I know that's then being translated into benefits for the people of the city?
If you don't know it, we should be telling you more.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, so this is absolutely correct. I think one of the things that we tend to do in universities, and it's just not true here, we tend to do things with the expectation that we do good and people will know we're doing good. If you don't sell it, nobody knows you're doing it. And that's one of the things that we're working hard to do.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you've created a vehicle for doing that now, because we do have the pledge with the consortium that was just signed last week. And that pledge has benchmarks and goals that we're going to be monitoring the progress on that. We're going to be reporting that on a regular basis. So now we have the ability to begin to start measuring the impact of the programs that we have, both in terms of what we're doing in our own operations to make them sustainable, but also in ways in which we can partner with the district in the field of urban sustainability. So we're creating an institute in urban sustainability that's going to develop academic programs. We just launched a new minor in sustainability that's available to all of our students. We're going to be recruiting a major leader to come in and do that. And the focus is urban sustainability. So we've started looking at stormwater management issues. We've started looking at energy use. We're looking at what we can do with smart grids, with other kinds of networking across working with the government, which is, of course, the largest consumer of energy here. I think we hosted on our campus last year a Green Gov Symposium where we had hundreds of federal executives who came to our campus to talk about ways of greening the federal government, which would have a huge impact on the status of the District of Columbia. So, but I think what this pledge will enable us to do through the consortium is keep regular data on all that we're accomplishing, and then we'll be able to publish that year after year. So I think it's a great start.
You know, Mr. Mayor, I think one of the things that's unique about the opportunity we have now is, and this will sound like some of the soft skills, but it's the personality or the makeup of the presidents in the consortium. My colleagues and I have been in consortiums in other states, and you can't even get the egos in all in one room. Here there's collaboration, and with your style of leadership, I think there's the potential to really capitalize on things that could have happened in other places, but the human personality got in the way of it. But we generally work together collaboratively and look forward to an opportunity, given your style, to do that. And that's not the case in most university settings or other states where one might find them, his or herself.
Just jump in here for a minute. If you look at the Graduate School's long history of being a major provider of training education in the federal government, there is a deep understanding and respect for public service and government service. And obviously there are some direct relationships between the 30 to 40,000 DC city workers and that respect for public service. But I've often thought of that sophomore, junior, senior in high school who's looking for government service, public service. We at the Graduate School would be very open to create that kind of public service academy in which there is sort of a spread of courses that familiarizes one with the 20 or 30 some different agencies and departments that we annually work with, whether it's DOD, Interior, whatever. That gives an individual a look at what government service really is all about through a limited internship. So where we have not typically looked at the public school, private school student But I think today, with the increased attention given to public service and government service, it is a real opportunity that all of us could, in some way, provide for that type of an academy.
You just spawned an interesting opportunity for collaboration. We're thinking about the same thing, so we'll do this later.
Good.
Yeah, really like
That's two. There's still time. You know, and that I think is a great example of what we're talking about in terms of how the universities, I think in the course of it also, you raise your own stock. Because then there's a tangible way in which the city is benefiting, the citizens are benefiting, and the case can be made for the investments that you are making, you know, in the city. We've talked about sustainability, and I really want to congratulate all the universities for signing on to Sustainable DC. And there are some very, as President Knapp indicated, there are some very concrete goals and objectives that we will be looking to achieve. But as we continue to roll out, you know, the district's economy, one of the things I talked about in the State of the District was looking at technology expansion as a way of growing our economy. Right now, we have about 2,000 technology firms of one kind or another in the District of Columbia, most of which are very small, because we have about 2,000, we have about 2,000 firms with 20,000 employees. Do the math, obviously, that's 5 to 10 employees per firm. You know, as ambitious as it may sound, we would like to become the Silicon Valley of the East. And I don't think any reason why we can't. But we can't do it by ourselves. What is it that the universities can help us do to expand our technology presence in the District of Columbia?
Well, you know, I got to talk about that one because that's right at the heart of what we're doing right now. We're building on our campus a 500,000 square foot building to be the largest science and engineering facility anywhere, certainly within 3 blocks of the White House. Probably anywhere else. So we're investing heavily in that. In fact, the way that building is designed, the top 2 floors are shelled out to make room for growth as we identify opportunities for research, some of which could involve partnerships with companies that are interested in moving into the district. We're also talking about, separate from that, creating incubator space to develop technology companies here, which I think can be a crucial benefit for those who are thinking either starting a company in the district because of what they're already doing here, or thinking of moving here because they're attracted to the growing critical mass that we have here. You know, when we talk about the consortium and that economic impact study that was done by Dr. Fuller that was alluded to earlier, one of the things we found there is we have 150,000 students in these consortium universities. So they're everywhere, students, and the talent that they bring here from around the world, really, because we recruit from 50 states. We also recruit from 130 countries. We bring people here with extraordinary ambitions and intellectual talents that we can draw on, as well as the talents that we draw from our immediate community here, which, by the way, is the best educated region in the country. And so there's a lot that we can do to marshal those resources and make this an attractive setting for not only the recruitment, but the spawning of companies. And of course, we're also talking very actively, as you know, Mr. Mayor, about what we can do across the river with the St. Elizabeth's campus, and there's talk about the other side of the river, or this side of the river, as a possibility for an education hub and a technology hub. So I think a lot of these things are right now coming together, and that's what it takes. Once you get the critical mass, then because right now, if you don't have the critical mass, you could start a company, but it's going to move somewhere where the talent is that it can have ready access to. Once you start to get enough activity going, that's, you know, there's a spark that then makes that explode, and then you've got Silicon Valley. That's what it takes to have a Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and I'll tell you put your finger on something that's hugely important to us right now, and that is the east side of the St. Elizabeth's campus. Has 170 plus acres, and you know, we've made it clear to anybody that will listen that while there will be, you know, diverse development there, a huge component of that, the centerpiece of it, will be creating technology opportunities. I mean, think about it. We've got the Coast Guard that will be coming on the west side with 3,700 employees. Hopefully one day Homeland Security will come there. They would have 14,000 employees there. But let's set that aside for a second. Even 3,700 employees. That will bring contractors, quickly behind, who will be looking for a presence. It will create the opportunity for amenities that have not existed in the southeast quadrant, in that area, ever. But if we really are going to be able to maximize the opportunity for technology growth and development on that campus, our universities, I think, will have to help us play a role in that. So, you know, going one step further than just how can you help us with technology, how can you help us, as President Knapp said, how can you help us with making sure we really optimize the outcomes on the St. Elizabeth's campus? What can Howard do, Dr. Ribeau?
You know, I'm writing it down as you speak. I'm a good student.
Writing down the answer.
Taking notes, yeah. Well, one of the areas that, where we're developing expertise, and maybe we can link this to the St. Elizabeth campus, is we've just, we're in the process of approving a doctoral program in cybersecurity. And we too are breaking ground in the next 8 months on a new integrated science building right on Georgia Avenue. And part of it's going to be computational sciences, and part's going to be it's over 100,000 square feet, and part of it's going to be cybersecurity. And it's going to be very similar to what Dr. Knapp mentioned, you know, unstructured wet labs, you know, to do research a number of ways. And I'm going to get our folks, you know, to talk with folks, you know, in your office about the kind of opportunities you're looking for, and to see if we can link that, because we have a cadre of faculty members. We have the new facility, and we built the programs, and there's no reason why we can't use that. We'll attract, you know, folks in technology. We also have a computer science program that graduates more African Americans than all the other universities combined in the country. But we're open to talking about that. That's why I was just reaching for my writing material to get that down, because I do not right now we don't have a linkage to the new, but we'll be open to really talking about that.
And you know, Mr. Mayor, universities bring several sides to this issue that I think, as we have engaged also in thinking about the St. Elizabeth project, Trinity is not a research doctoral institution. That is what George Washington is, Howard, Georgetown, and some of the others. But we are a teaching institution, and so part of what we're trying to figure out in that space is what are the skill sets and the academic programs and the coursework that all of those new employees are going to need, or that the residents of Southeast in particular are going to need in order to be ripe for employment in those industries when they come to town, or in Homeland Security, or with the new military opportunities through the Coast Guard relocation and so forth. So trying to build out academic programs is one of the things we're spending a lot of time on at Trinity, because we're very focused on the fact that the citizens of the District of Columbia need to have skills coming out of college that will relate directly to their workforce opportunities. And that does not betray the liberal arts, but it refreshes the liberal arts in a way that makes them employable. So for example, just recently I had a meeting with our communication faculty about what are we doing about digital media. And you know, how do you take old line academic programs and convert them for the new wave, and say that the students we educate today must be employable tomorrow, and we have to revamp our curricula accordingly. So that's where we are, and we want it to be aligned with where the new opportunities are for the District of Columbia.
Well, and a concrete model to support that, by the way, is something that Maryland did by the Pax River Naval Air Base there, which was build a center for multiple universities to come together and offer their programs. So we could easily imagine on the East Campus there having a center where not just one university, but all of our universities could design programs that would meet the needs of the community and also meet the needs of the Coast Guard or Homeland Security, if that's what it ultimately is, providing them with the kind of education that would support their operations there, which would actually then become a way of spawning other educational opportunities really across the district, but certainly focused east of the river.
I am so glad you said that, because we have a proposal that is emerging to create a center for innovation and entrepreneurship on the east side of the campus. And one of the ways to make that successful, frankly, is to be able to have a partnership with the universities. We were on the Hill yesterday, you know, talking with one of the members about it. We've talked about it with several of the members thus far. It's actually, believe it or not, it's in the president's budget, you know, because periodically things get in there that we like. Periodically there are things that get into the federal budget that really would benefit the city. That's one of the things we're pursuing, and I have to tell you two things. One, if we could represent that the universities through the consortium were going to work with us to make that successful.
Yeah.
And if you were to join forces with us to make the case with the Congress,
Sure.
I suspect it would enhance his chances of seeing the light of day.
We're there.
Happy to do it.
All right.
Great idea. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great.
May I just comment on one of the things we could specifically do, Mayor? And that is, I don't mean to interrupt my friend Jerry, but I just did.
But you are anyway, right?
we want to focus at the University of Columbia on technological entrepreneurship. What we want to do is not just bring people in, but grow the entrepreneurs wherever they happen to be.
Yep.
And there are a lot of really bright folks in this town who are underexploited.
There were 500 people last night in this room, and the conversation was around startups and expansion.
Yep.
That's great.
Technology is the common denominator,
Yep.
but the other common denominator was them having the business acumen to be able to take great ideas and have them see the light of day.
Yep.
They're looking for ability to generate investments in their ideas, how to develop the business, how to grow the business, how to do the HR things. Again, I think that this would be a wonderful contribution to a priority that we've established in the District of Columbia, and that is expanding the technology presence. Dr. Ice.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're certainly looking, and we are developing, is as opposed to always the sage on the stage, can we create learning environments so that I simulate the best of that instructor in a classroom through a virtual world, so that I don't go off to 7th and Maryland Street to get my education, or I don't go off to campus, but education and what I need to do my job better and simply to enjoy life better can be available to me 24 hours a day. And as such, we have created sort of state-of-the-art studios and electronic classrooms that can be broadcast anywhere, anytime, so that that can be archived. I can deal with it at 3 a.m. or I can deal with it at real time, whether I'm on the West Coast or I'm in Washington, D.C. So I think separating education from it is a place to go to get educated versus lifelong learning is clearly going to be where the workforce will always have to be now and in the future. We have workforce that are highly capable of going on the web to decide which restaurant, which hotel, where they're going to go, and yet our education seems to be way behind that from the standpoint of accessibility, attractiveness, and entertaining. And yet also vocational, technical. And I think that the future for all of us is to drive an entirely different learning environment, that the individual there is no separation between what I do on the job and what I'm learning all day. And it becomes a part of the life of 8 hours on the job. Some of it is learning to do something better, and I am able to dial up and see that. And it may be a 20-minute segment that helps me do something better because this is the problem I'm facing right now. I'm dealing with a difficult employee. Let me dial up and see how I should deal with that. So I think the future is to create these virtual learning educational environments that are not separated from place and time.
You know, we've talked about sustainability and the jobs associated with that. We've talked about technology, the jobs associated with that, and the role that the universities can play in helping to facilitate growth in both of those areas. The other area that, you know, has been a staple in many respects in the District of Columbia is the extent to which we have healthcare jobs in the city. I won't say downside, but the challenging side is that a lot of those jobs are filled by people who don't live in the city. And since we cannot tax income at its source, it means that that revenue leaves the city every day and perhaps never to return. So rather than try to fight the battle, which is, you know, a long-term best battle of how we get the authority to tax income at its source, the more winnable battle in the near term, I think, is how we get a larger share of the workforce being people who live in the city. That having been said, you know, we are committed. We've spent a lot of time working on this to the development of Macmillan. Macmillan is close to you.
Excellent.
Macmillan is right across the way from you. Macmillan is close to everybody in the city. And we've talked about having a presence there, among other things, of the opportunity to train people in the variety of healthcare professions and allied health opportunities, recognizing that you've got the hospital center right there, you've got the Veterans Hospital right there, you've got Children's Hospital. You have a concentration of healthcare opportunities right in that area. If we were to pursue that with having a building or buildings devoted to that kind of training, how could the universities help us facilitate that?
Oh my goodness, Mr. Mayor, you are singing my song now. As I mentioned earlier, Trinity, because of the Washington Hospital Center, started a nursing program, and that was just 5 years ago, and today we have 200 students in the major and 300 in the pipeline, and that just is in a very short period of time, and half of those at least are District of Columbia residents. So we know that there is this tremendous, and there's more students in this town and frankly nationally who want to be in these programs than we have seats for. So it's not like we're competing for students. We're all trying to figure out how to create the pipeline. In addition to that, working with the MedStar group in particular, but also Providence and Children's and so forth, the need for the allied health professions is enormous. So we are rolling out additional academic programs in occupational therapy and some of the other therapies. What we all know, and those who are already well ahead of Trinity in this, it is expensive to build laboratories. It is difficult to find enough faculty to teach all of those programs. So to the extent we could work in partnership with the Macmillan Development on the creation of the kind of classroom building, laboratories, whatever, that would in fact be devoted to educating our local population to enter the health professions broadly, that would be such a win-win for everybody, because it would actually reduce some of the campus development issues that we're all facing by putting the facility in a location that won't trouble most people, that the hospitals in fact could participate in, and in fact send their adjunct faculty over immediately, so it's very convenient for them to partner on the faculty issues, and very convenient certainly for the residents of Northeast Washington and our neighborhoods there, but convenient for everybody actually. So count us in. We'll work with you on that for sure.
Well, you know, as a conceptual matter, and the devil is always in the details, of course, but as a conceptual matter, we've thought about us build the facility, the training facility, and then through this conversation, having the universities actually run the programs there. That would be yet another partnership, and a partnership through the consortium.
At the Graduate School, it's one of the ways that we reached out to the community as I talk about sort of that government public service. We began a year ago for the first time ever at the school an allied health associate degree program with a number of tracks in it. Build it, and we will come. Yep. There is no question.
Same principle as what we're talking about at St. Elizabeth's. If we had a center there that we could all use, because we have a lot of complementary programs, so that we wouldn't have an associate program in allied health, but we would have a physician assistant program, and so that so you'd build all the layers that you would need, which would not only enable people to get into this very important and growing industry, but would also give them sort of a career ladder, because they could be retrained as their skills developed and they wanted to go back and get more of that. So we could actually have a layered set of programs that would reflect the unique strengths of all of our institutions operating together under a common roof. And again, like that center I was describing.
And institutions like that have an infrastructure that's just not in the allied health. You need individuals that are in managerial, supervisory roles, are in all of that financial HR support for that. So the auxiliary areas are also immense in that. It's just not an allied nursing exclusive content area. It's all of the other things that make an organization go.
Well, the vision for me would be, satellite campuses that essentially you guys would be working together under the same roof, but it would be a satellite campus for each university in terms of St. Eve's and technology, in terms of healthcare positions, at Macmillan.
Let me suggest, Mr. Mayor, we collaborate fairly quickly. We are designing programs at the community college now to do exactly that. We'd like to design them with a view towards what's happening. So when we get there, we're completely in sync. And that's something we can start doing now, in fact.
Well, I think, unfortunately, I can't believe our time is up. This has been, for me anyway, a really robust discussion. I think we've got some very concrete takeaways from this. In the course of thanking the panel, I want to thank John Childers and Sally Cram also. They really are the staff of the consortium of universities in the city. We work with both of them every day, and they are the mortar and the bricks, if you will. So, John and Sally, I want to thank you all for what you all do to work with the city every day.
Thank you.
And I'd ask you, if you would, I want to thank all of you for coming out, and before I turn it back to our President and CEO, please give a big hand to the panel of the University President. Thank you, sir.
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you, and Presidents, thank you all so much. As always, Mr. Mayor, we never have enough time to do this. We always run out of time, and I know that some of our panelists, we will not do any Q&A from the audience, but a number of our panelists will be around for the reception. So just a couple of things before we completely close out. If my Twitter is operating appropriately, the Hoyas won 64-52. So they move on to the next round. And so I know Jack DeGioia is smiling in New York this afternoon. A couple of other things. We have a couple of other universities that are represented in the room. Gallaudet is in the room, and we thank them for being here today. And I believe Catholic is also in the room, and so we thank them as well. I would not be doing my job as Chamber President if I did not continue to promote the Chamber shamelessly. And on the back of your program are two events that are coming up. The first golf tournament headed by Tom Graham from Pepco, who's in the back of the room and pulling that off. It's the first time we have attempted to do this on April 30th. I know Tom would welcome your buying whatever sponsorship that you're willing to write a check for. And the second event is on May 16th. It is our Small Business Awards and Expo, where we really roll out the red carpet for our small businesses in our city. And so we invite you to join us there as well. The third thing that's not on here, because we just got it confirmed on the mayor's calendar, and that is the next policy forum. I work for a boss this year, Matt Klein, who you met earlier, who loves policy forums, and I have a mayor that loves policy forums. And so we're going to do, I think, 4 of these this year. And so the next one is on June 21st. Just confirmed, and it will be on the impact of health care reform on the business community. All of us are now anticipating and preparing for this, for President Obama's health care plan coming on in early 2013, and so we want to make sure that all of you are prepared for everything. So we are in the process of planning that, and the mayor will play Oprah again and lead our forum. So finally, and I just want to also acknowledge, we have, I think, 3 deans of business schools in the audience tonight, and I just want to acknowledge them because they do a lot with us, and we are looking forward to working even closer with them and with a lot of the initiatives that you all talked about today. I hope my staff has been taking a lot of notes in the back, and I know it's been filmed. I'd like to also just acknowledge the Chamber staff. They're all around the room, and they work very hard for you each and every day. And the 3 people that led this effort is Annette Coram, who's in the back of the room. She's our Director of Events. David Goldblatt, who's right up front, our Legislative Counsel. And Jeff Gross, who is somewhere in the room, who did, there in the back, who did all the fundraising. So But it is truly a team effort, and so every member of the chamber staff participated in making this event today. Now I'd like to have to come close out our program, our legislative reception sponsor, Steve Flippen, who is the Director of Federal Affairs for CSX. Steve, please come forward, and thank you so much for your sponsorship.
Thank you. Glad to do this. Well, if you didn't know the importance of our district colleges and universities before today, you do now. The jobs they create and the role they play in the vibrancy of our city is measurable in so many ways. Faculty and staff work, live, and shop in our city, contributing to the local economy. Thousands of students remain in the district after graduation because of job opportunities that the district has to offer. CSX has been a strong supporter of the education improvements being made in the district from DCPS to higher education. At CSX, we recognize the need to partner with educational institutions throughout the country, and especially here in the District of Columbia. CSX has been proud to sponsor 2 district city year teams for nearly a decade that have been mentoring in the local elementary schools and involved in hundreds of community projects. We are working with DOES and UDC through the community college to prepare the workforce of today for the jobs that CSX's projects in the district will create in coming months and years. We at CSX strive to ensure that the district will reap true long-term benefits from the quality jobs and community improvements that our projects provide. We look forward to continuing to work with the mayor and his administration and being a strong corporate partner with the DC Chamber of Commerce and the city as a whole. CSX is proud to be involved in many transportation projects in the district that employ DC residents and bring new opportunities to the district on our rail system. We will continue to do our part to make sure DC is the world-class city that the mayor so eloquently speaks of. As a sponsor of the legislative reception, I want to thank Mayor Gray, our expert panelists, and all of you for attending today. I hope you'll join us for the legislative reception, and thank you.